Okay. Well, great. Well, today I thought we'd talk about something that has been impactful in my life, and I know many, many other people's lives, and it comes from the Keller Williams world, from a class called Bold: Business Objective Life by Design, which I've taken probably 13 times, I guess. Started by Dianna Kokoszka when Gary Keller said we need to train our people to be the best agents out there available. And from that, there are these bold laws. And I don't know if they're affirmations. They're called laws for a reason. They're directives in your life. So I thought we'd skip through these, and some talk a little bit more about than others. We can kind of bounce them back and forth. And so it's kind of a challenge within Bold. You learn these throughout the process. It's like a 7-week class. You go once a week for a full day of training. And typically there's a Bold law each time that everybody practices over the week. And then at the end of the event, or the last kind of graduating class, there's a contest to see who can remember them all without making any mistakes. And I've participated in that, I guess I'll say. And also there are some times when I can't sleep at night. I'll just kind of fumble through those and see how many I can remember. And they don't put me to sleep, but it does help kind of settle the mind. When there are many other things that I do to help me sleep, the 23rd Psalm is probably the one I do the most. But this is another one. So kick it off. All work expands to fill the time allowed. It's a given.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what though, I have that may be one of the most that I struggle with the most, because I want something to take an hour and it's not done in an hour and a half and two and a half. And I can let go some, yet not as much as maybe others could.
I feel like I can't even talk about this one because I'm so the worst offender of this. But I can talk about it because I am the worst offender of this. And I know how true it is. Like the more that you apply this to your life, the more you will see just how bad it is. That if you give yourself 2 hours to do something, it'll take you 2 hours. If you give yourself 2 weeks, it'll take you 2 weeks. And if you give yourself 2 years, it'll take you 2 years. And if you don't set parameters, it probably won't happen at all. And when I need to, the great, for instance, that they use for this to illustrate it in Bold is you are about to head out for vacation on Friday afternoon. And you're going to go to Hawaii for 2 weeks, and everything you have to get done, you have to do a week's worth of work from 9 to 4 on Friday. And if you don't get it done, you can't go on vacation. And if you do get it done, you can go. You will get a week's worth of work done between 9 and 4 on a Friday before you leave on vacation.
And the lesson to learn from that is we should all schedule more vacations because we'd get more work done. And you should encourage your employees to take more time off because they will get more work done before
totally
take time off.
There's not a certain amount of productivity in people as far as time. It's not like you have 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year worth of productivity in you. Like no one has, well, I shouldn't say no one. There's very few people that can get do that much work and be efficient the whole time. There is a certain amount of productivity that each person will give, and it will come through in whatever amount of time you give them. If you give them less time, it'll probably come through the same as if you give them more time. So I guess that's like taking it from the 2 hour, example to the whole year. Like you're going to get a year's worth of work done if I give you 6 months or I give you a year. So, which is really scary.
Yeah. And if I give you 6 minutes and you have no choice, you have to finish it in 6 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
I'll also say that all of these laws, I believe, they're not Keller Williams laws. They've come from some research. Some people, I happened to look up this particular one in this is Parkinson law.
Got it.
So
That's
somebody
smart to
has
do
come
that,
up
yeah.
with these, and I looked up so all work expands to fill the time allowed. The next one is be, do, achieve, and that to me is so simple that many people stumble on it. And it's that whole thing of where am I at in my life? In order to get started, I have to be what I'm not. And then I have to start doing the activity. And then after those things, it's the achievement. And it's sort of like the lead lag, what are the things that I need to do to lead into the lag measurements that will produce the results that I really need or I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. So it's B is mindset.
B is mindset.
Do is activities. Achieve, or it used to be have, which was too materialistic.
Mm-hmm.
And some people didn't connect with, I don't care about stuff. I don't care about, awards or numbers. So they did achieve, which is kind of more broad.
Yeah.
And I think for me, have was always like great because it was like, that's exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing. Cause I want to have no debt, or I want to have a house, or I want to, and I took this program at 22. So
we took it together.
Yeah. I was 22 years old and everyone else in the room was 40 basically, or more. I mean, the average age is probably like 45.
Oh, anyways.
If not higher.
Yeah.
And I knew nothing about anything, and which is great. And so I started my career out of college with this as my baseline. And this is, most people went 20 years and then took this and they had to like unlearn everything they learned over 20 years. And now we're trying to shove this stuff in, whereas I was starting from square one with this. And if anything, I have to like go back to it and be like, don't forget like your day one training,
Right.
So it's such a great baseline for me to start with this.
Yeah. This was be, do, achieve was always one of my go-tos, I guess, just because, when I started, the most important thing that I had to do when I started in real estate, the most important thing that I recognized was people had to know that I was in real estate because they didn't know that.
Right.
And until I could get that information out there, why would anybody think of me for real estate?
Right. And if you take it outside of profession and make it more broad or simpler, like your family or your health or whatever, you can't just like have the healthy body you want just because. Okay, so well, how do you get the healthy body you want? Well, go a step back. You have to do things that someone who has a healthy body does. Or, you eat healthy food, you exercise, you get good sleep, all the things a healthy person does. Okay, well, what's going to make you do that every day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year? Well, if you believe that you're someone who doesn't take care of themselves and you've never been healthy and you've always been, not slept enough, not eating the right foods, not whatever it is, then you're not going to do those things. But if you believe you're a healthy person, then you're much more likely to at least do those things. So it's like working your way back to, okay, what is the first step? It's not to do the right thing. That's debatable, whether where you actually start. But believing first, then doing the things that someone who believed those things would do, will get you the things or the goal, the accomplishments or the whatever it is, the target that you want.
Yeah, and just how you want to be in all things. Do you want to be optimistic? Do you want to be positive? Do you want to be a good role model? And then what are you going to do those things so that you can achieve it? It's simple.
Yeah.
It's so simple.
Yeah.
So be, do, achieve. And I this was another one that I did look up, and I couldn't find a specific person, but it was Stephen Covey and Tony Robbins.
Yeah. A lot of these like people coached Dianna, like John Maxwell is her coach. And then if you look at them, they've written these things, but they were coached by someone. It's like Zig Ziglar or I'm trying to think of who else, but these things, someone taught them that, and then eventually you end up with like your farmer great grandfather who mentioned it to Zig Ziglar one time, and then he took it and wrote it as a chapter in a book. Yeah. And it's like, where did that come from?
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah. Our good friend Jim Coffin, Life is a Bullet.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
He's pretty sure he coined that one.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one is change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. And that's a bingo.
Yeah.
You can look at something as a very bad, how am I ever going to get out of this situation? I'm in terrible debt. I'm never going to get out of this. Until you look at that differently, you'll always be in debt.
Yeah.
Until you take those small little steps to pay off, even if it's $10 a week. And that just is painful because the end of that is so far away, yet you're changing the way you look at things and things are going to change.
I think the best example so the goal is like see problem as opportunity, or like there's a book called The Obstacle is the Way. It's like see the circumstances are set before you not as something that's happening against you, but something that's happening not just to you, but something that's happening for you. And the like raw or simple example they give is they show a picture of something, and it's like there's a few examples, like there's a horse. If you look at it this way, and if you turn it that way, it's a frog, horse, frog. They say that over and over again. And then another example is like one's like a picture of a lady, and one's a picture of a man, or a 6 and a 9, and one person standing on this side and the other person standing on this side, and they're saying 6 9 6 9, and just changing your perspective changes what it is completely. So if you're facing a difficult set of circumstances, maybe it's not convenient, maybe it's not whatever, instead of seeing it as this is happening against me and I have to accept it or fight with all my might against it, and woe is me, terrible, blah, blah, blah. If instead you see it as an opportunity to develop mental toughness, courage, greater competencies, because you now understand whatever, you had to go through. Now you can help someone else with that. It's like, okay, now it's like opened up to opportunity in so many different ways, which is, everyone struggles with that. Like, anything we're saying is not like, oh yeah, I do this all the time.
Right. Well, along that line, and I shouldn't say this without knowing the name, but the tennis player from Eastern Europe, do you know his name?
Djokovic?
Is he's on
number
fire.
one.
Number one.
He's old. Not old, but
he's number one. Yeah.
He's like aging out of tennis, not coming in. Yeah.
Yes. So Djokovic. I watched something.
Djokovic. I don't know.
Yeah. It's 60 Minutes or 60 Minutes or what's the other show? Similar 2020. It was one of those shows interviewing him, and he talked about mindset, and he said that there are a lot of people that say you remove all negative thoughts and they're just not allowed into your brain, and he said that is impossible. The question is how can you minimize the time that those thoughts come in, and that you quickly dispel them or turn them, on a dime, so that they're then not a negative, they're a positive. Right. And he said, that's what I work on. He said, because I have not been able to not have those thoughts, yet I can process them fast.
That sounds like a sports psychologist that was never really successful at athletics saying that this is what you need to do. And I think I watched that, and I've like watched interviews with him. He's fascinating to me. He talked about like, if you don't have those negative thoughts, you don't know you're losing. Like if you're down in a set, like, oh, it's all good. Oh, it's all good. It's like you're going to play slowly to lose versus like, I am down. This is not good. Like, and using that, you just to fuel you. Yeah, you just then have to transition. Like, this is not good. I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, and get in the right mindset.
And I've done this before.
Right.
So taking your mind back to when I did that before and how I did it, I'm going to do it exactly like that or better than I did it the last
Right.
time because I
And-
learned something.
Totally. And moving the focus from the score to the ball.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I see the score. Yes, I'm down. I need to look at the ball.
Mm.
What is the ball doing? Because that's the only thing that matters. That determines the score.
Yeah. As long as I hit the ball last.
Right. Totally.
That's all that matters. And
totally.
it's in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was listening to someone talk about martial arts or fighting or whatever, and they said that a lot of times when guys lose mentally, maybe in second or third round, they will fight in order to not get knocked out or to not like completely lose.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is just to survive, but they've already lost in their mind. They're fine with that. They've accepted defeat. They're just like, how long can I get the timer to go before it's over? And I thought that was really interesting that like there's no way you win with that mindset. So it's like if you could get in that mindset but then get out of it, maybe you could come back and win. But as long as you're in that mindset, you're not going to take chances. You're not going to unless you just get lucky.
I think about wrestling in that frame of mind, just because of the time frame and the solidarity in it. I guess there were many times when it was like, oh, geez, I got 50 seconds and I'm losing.
Totally.
And it wasn't that I thought through, okay, I'm down by 5. I got to get a reversal and I got to get 3 back points and then I'd be tied.
Right.
And if I get another takedown, then I'd win.
Right.
That boggles my mind that I wasn't at that point in time in my life.
At 16, you weren't thinking like that.
Yeah. So now the fun of it is, though, I have been working with the wrestlers a little bit and seeing how maybe I can help them in that.
Totally.
And watching their coach help them with management. And I'm sure our coach, Jim was helping us with that stuff. It just wasn't filtering into my brain at that time.
Yeah.
It didn't get in.
Well, the goal is to teach them so they mess up on wrestling. So when they get to the real world, they can do it right with something that really matters. Right. Wrestling's important, but real life really matters.
Yeah. So change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. And then the next one is change your thinking, change your world. And to me, those are pretty similar. I don't see a lot of difference there. And what's of note here is, excuse me, I have these all listed alphabetically because that's how I memorized them. A's, B's, C's, And when you put them in this context, it does seem there is definitely repetition within this. You could probably combine some of these. However, the impact is great and it spurs conversations in different ways.
Change your thinking, change your world. To me, the first one, change the way you look at things, the things you look at change, is about like the approach. Change your thinking, change your world is about like the result. If you want your world to change, you're going to have to change the way you think about things. So I think they're both, a segment of change.
Mm-hmm. Next one is clarity is power.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear.
Yeah. The best example for me is like a budget. Like I do like cyclical budgeting, which is
cyclical budgeting. What do you mean?
Again, me not doing what I should be doing is how I know what works and what doesn't work. Not having a budget 12 months a year for the rest of my life. But like going through a season and then being like, oh, I really need a budget. And then getting clarity on where money's going and being like, wow, I was just working on my budget today actually, and seeing how much we're spending a month on, this segment versus that segment. And you can really make a difference in your budget if you focus on the areas that are big, not the areas that are small. Like they talk about like the coffee. Yeah. Okay. But if you're spending 0.5% on coffee, how much is that going to move the needle versus if you, reduced your, gas consumption by, which is 3% of your budget. If you reduce that to 0 because you're now walking to work, because you can.
Or you just happened to buy a house recently and the interest rate was 7.75 and it's dropped 1.5 points.
Yeah, exactly.
That's and that's 30% of your budget.
Right, exactly. So I was surprised at how much I was spending in certain areas. Well, until I know that, I can't really make a change. So like getting that clarity is like, it's just so impactful.
I think clarity is power. For me, kind of an outside example is, I've been married to your mother it'll be 38 years next week. And, there's a tendency within ourselves to think we know how to love somebody, how to support them, how to be there for them, how to encourage them. And so much of that oftentimes is what we want ourselves, what we need, our own needs, you're giving to the other person. And that just falls on deaf ears. And not because they don't offer something back, but it doesn't mean anything to them, or it means something different. So you as the giver are like, oh, I just did all this and I got nothing for it. Well, because it didn't mean anything. So, your mom's love language is acts of service. And, I've always known that. And yet, how do I fulfill that? Because it's not my love language, So I've just been trying to focus more and more, making a list of things that I could do, and more things that I can do that she isn't asking me for. I'd rather not have a list from her, partly because this I can do it in my own kind of time, and also I can, to the extent I can, surprise her with little things.
Right. Yeah, that's cool.
So that's just a clarity around that for me was huge. And thinking it took me, probably took me 35 years to really figure that out. And I remember when we first got married too. I'd have a gift or something and to give to her or somebody else, and she called me out several times. This is really a gift for you. It's not for that person. This is something that. How do you know that they would enjoy this? You enjoy this,
right?
So clarity is power. Come from contribution. I love that one.
Mm-hmm. This will save you a lot of pain if you're trying to start something new or like be successful in an area and you need other people to buy in. Because if you go to people and you're like, hey, I'm doing this, which is actually a great thing to do if you know the person, to go say like, hey, I'm starting this. Would you please help me? And what can I do to help? And what can I do to be of value to you in general? But if you don't know someone or you need to, make a sale or whatever, man, this will save you so much pain if you just bring value to people and ask nothing in return.
Right. Ask nothing in return and give them give them value.
Like
right,
true
exactly.
value.
Like true value.
Not like here's a magnet.
Yeah, I was just with somebody a few minutes ago talking, and I had part of a transaction, they needed to be paid something, so I dropped the check off to them, and we were talking, and they've got a health issue, a concern, and I'm like, do I go there or do I go with the? And spent 20 minutes talking with them about, you talk to this doctor, read this book, listen to this podcast, and I don't expect anything from that. And who knows, maybe it'll point them in a different direction that they might have been headed in, and it might avoid, more pain and more surgery that they really don't need.
Right. I think it's cool to think about people that I know that do this really well in other industries or for other reasons even, that just show up and like do things for people. Because there are some people who this like is legitimately the way they step out of the door in the morning just because. And then there's people like me, I feel like, where like I'll do it because I have like that Catholic guilt, whatever going on, where I'm like, I should do this, But there's genuinely people that just, this is how they operate. And there's nothing else they'd rather do. And then there's people who are like unwilling to, even if you tell them like, hey, this will work for you, they're still like, I'm not doing anything for anyone, no matter what.
Well, and then there's one more group of people, and those are the disingenuous people who, they're doing something for you, and they're totally expecting leaps and bounds more.
And that's a spectrum, from like wanting to do it because it's just the way you are, and then like, unwilling or disingenuous on the other side. And we're all somewhere on that line. And the further I go through life, the more I'm like, man, it is just so much less painful if I just don't expect anything and help where I can. And then once in a while I'll get greedy, and I'm like, oh, what am I doing? And so I just think it's it's so helpful, especially if you want to be successful in something, to just start by bringing people value and expecting nothing in return. And you can waste a ton of time.
Right.
But like that's what you give, is
It's what you have is time, and it
exactly.
is what you give.
Yeah.
And the more you give time, the more people will recognize that. And yep. Okay, come from contribution. Next one, complaining equals garbage magnet.
Guilty.
Well, it kind of goes back to that mindset thing. And but the magnetic part of it and garbage, the affiliation with that, and it just feeds itself, and it's like a virus.
Yeah.
It just starts attacking your white blood cells and causing disease and other conditions that bring you down.
Yeah, like what are the different ways you can magnetize garbage, or how can garbage manifest in your life? Like starting with, let's say you just put out complaining. What are the different ways garbage can show up in your life? Like the people you hang around. Who wants to hang around a complainer? Complainers. Your health, you're complaining instead of doing. Your finances. Like there's so many different ways that garbage can manifest itself in your life if you are complaining for many different reasons. And so it's like, oh wow, yeah, and I'm so guilty of complaining. The things I complain about are different than someone else. We all have an area where we can work on not complaining.
Think about the weather.
See,
I mean, and so that's like an introductory conversation for people.
Yeah, that's like the basic. Yeah.
What a terrible day.
Yeah.
It's pouring out.
Yeah.
And then the complaining, you just go from there, as opposed to, hey, boy, we really needed rain.
Right.
Yeah. Look at the flowers. The grass is going to eat this alive.
Hate rain. I don't mind rain. If it's raining, I can go surfing, or I can do, there's stuff I can do in the rain. I don't like when it's raining and you're doing something. Like you said, it's an opportunity. I remember when taking Bold, they were like, go out and knock on people's doors when it's raining, because people will be surprised that you're out there and say it's everyone's home. No one's out. They're avoiding, if they were going to get groceries today, maybe they're looking at getting them tomorrow because it's not going to be raining. So people are home. And so I think that's a cool way to look at it. Weather is not what I complain about, but I'll keep that to myself for now.
So complaining equals garbage magnet. Next one, do what you've always done and you'll get what you've always gotten.
Similar to change.
Do what you've done. Do what you've always done and you'll get what you've always gotten. Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. Yeah.
If you want different results, you're going to have to do different things than what you've been doing. If you want the same results, just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think we're going to find as we go along here that some of these just dovetail into others. Don't listen to your drunk monkey.
So your drunk monkey is the insecure version of yourself, the thoughts that say, I can't do this, or I'm not good enough, or I won't be successful because of
it's laughing at you when you're really trying at something. It's being sarcastic at you. Yeah. It's that inner.
If I put myself out there, people are going to assume that I'm a salesy type person. There's like a million ways that your drunk monkey could show up. Yeah. Fear.
Yeah. And it's always there. You just don't listen to it. Don't mistake movement for achievement. So I'm really good at this.
You're really good at movement?
No, yeah, movement.
Yeah, me too.
I'm moving, I'm doing things, I'm making things happen.
You know who's not?
Who?
Your wife.
My wife. Yeah,
she's the opposite of this.
She's not going to move unless she's achieving something.
I mean, there's an occasion where she's cleaning the house when she's stressed or something, which might be...
However, she's doing it so that there's totally achievement in the process.
Yeah. But I am so guilty of this. I do think there's space for free time, thinking, but it needs to be scheduled. I don't schedule it enough.
Well, if you can separate those two things, free time, you may be moving and you may be achieving at a very different pace. That's your choice.
Right.
I'm choosing to rake the leaves. well, if I give myself 3 hours to rake the leaves because that's what I want to do, I want to do it a certain way, then give yourself 3 hours. And,
right.
But at the same time, if you only going to give yourself an hour and, you could do it in 15 minutes, do it in 15 minutes.
Right. If you could pay someone else to do what you're doing for cheaper than your time is worth, technically, you should pay them. However, sometimes you want to do it yourself,
Right.
raking leaves.
Yeah.
So I think like that kind of, breaks down at some point where it's like, well, you want to do this and you don't want to do that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fear or faith, you choose.
Yeah.
And, I think about that, the word fear. And I think about, there's a song, Fear is a Liar. And there's, I can't remember. I think the most used phrase in the Bible is
fear not.
Fear not. However that's worded. Yeah, fear not.
Do not be afraid.
Don't be afraid. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's good.
Focus on the plan, not the problem. Goes back to that whole mindset thing. But that's in our real estate business, that's like 100%.
Yeah. There's always something popping up that's going to ruin the transaction and the exchange of property.
And that relates really to most any business and any situation, any relationship. And when people focus on the problem, they just spiral. They get lost in that that mix of, I can't fix this,
right?
Yes, you often need some time to identify the problem. However, it then goes beyond identification to wallowing in the problem.
Right.
Can't get out of this. How am I going to do this? I can't do anything.
The best is to take a problem that you have and go to someone and be like, this is like severe. I need help. This is terrible. This is ruining everything. And it's like taking up 90% of your brain. And you talk to someone for like 10 minutes. They hear your problem. They don't just like tell you, dismiss it. They kind of reflect it back to you, help you focus on the solution, not the problem. And you get like 90% of your brain back because like that has now been dealt with. Or you do that for someone else and they come to you with, you can't even see how foggy their brain is, but then they like talk to you and then leave. And like, you have no idea how much like you just gave them, like offloading that and like being able to move forward. It's like
gave
crazy.
Them clarity and now they have power.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's amazing how much focusing on the problem versus like having the solution figured out. It's not like do this on your own. I mean, yeah, that's great if you can do it on your own, but
oftentimes it takes the person, when you've identified the problem with that person may be the one that, you ultimately need to help on the solution.
Right.
But like you say, you may need to get help as well. How you participate in here is how you participate everywhere.
I say this all the time.
Yeah. I think about practice, and going back to the sports analogy, you practice. If you want to take tennis, we talked about tennis. I mean, how many times are you going to serve to make your serve the best that it possibly can be, so that when you go to the match, you're not practicing how to serve. You're serving like you've done 1,000,000 times.
Right. But you wouldn't practice the serve underhand and like, whatever.
Oh, yeah, right.
Whatever. And then show up to a match and be like, all right, now it's time for me to go overhand and crush this thing. It's like, you're totally unprepared. Or I always say like winners are winners everywhere. Like people that like pour their heart and soul into one thing usually pour their heart and soul into anything that they're a part of and say no, ideally, to anything that they're not going to be able to pour their heart and soul in because it's a disservice to whatever it is they're involved in. I think that, you meet someone and like they're good at this thing. And so you're like, I'll meet people that are good at one thing and I can just like tell and somehow they'll be interested in jiu-jitsu or surfing or whatever it is. And I'll be like, oh, you should come do this. Like you should try it. And then they'll be good at it instantly. And I'm like, Of course, because how you participate at work or how you participate at whatever thing I met you at that you were like a stud at, of course you're going to be with jujitsu or whatever it is. Like it just shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, the opposite is true.
Right. Yep. Exactly. If it's not on your schedule, it doesn't exist.
Even if it's in your schedule, it might not exist, but it definitely doesn't exist if it's not in your schedule.
Yes. Yeah. And then kind of follow up to that is it's not about selling real estate. It's about keeping a schedule. Mm. And that real estate's in there because that's a business we're in. And yet it could be anything.
Right.
You know, if it's related to relationships, you know, if that person isn't in your schedule or on your mind, they don't exist.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that one's, if it's not on your schedule, it doesn't exist, is about the most important thing to hit on that is that the things that are most important need to be in your schedule, and the stuff that's going to happen anyway, you could pretty much leave out of your schedule because it's going to happen anyway. I don't need to put that I work from 9 to 5 in my schedule. I need to put that I need to work on this project from 9 to 11 when I have energy in my schedule. And I need to put that I'm spending time with Mariana on Wednesday from 5 to 7, and I need to put, you know, on Saturday we're doing this thing as a family, because if I don't, then when someone asks me, hey, can you do this on Saturday? And I'll just be like, oh, sure, nothing planned. Mm-hmm. We do like a weekly schedule meeting where we say everything that we have going this week and chisel out time, because if we don't, we end up, you know, 3 weeks later, like we have not hung out like intentionally.
The family relationship doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Keep your emotions between the lines. I use that a lot when I talk with clients, you know.
It's a really hard thing to tell someone. Like, it's a great thing to be like, I need to keep my emotions between the lines. I feel like it's really hard to like, hey, don't get too excited when we get an offer. Don't get too devastated when the offer falls through. We can go right back on the market. We don't have to do a price reduction or whatever the scenario is. It's almost something you have to say from day one. With whatever you're doing, and then as you hit highs and lows, be like, hey, yeah, we're under contract, but we have due diligence. You know, we could end up back on the market. Don't get too excited. And then we're back on the market. Hey, remember I told you this is not that big of a deal. We can get another buyer.
Yeah, forecasting. You know, what could possibly come up.
Right.
Giving plan A's, B's, and C's. You know, scenarios. Yeah, is really will help people be able to truly keep their emotions between the lines.
There's a great
and it says emotions between the lines because emotions can go above and below that line.
Totally. There's a great story. It's online somewhere. Could be told better than I say about this. I believe it's like a Chinese man, and someone comes to him and he gets a cow. He finds a cow, and they're like, oh, that's so awesome. You got a cow. And he's like, maybe. And then the cow gets lost, and they're like, oh, so sad. You lost your cow. And he's like, maybe. And then, you know, someone finds the cow and brings it back to him, and it's his long lost son. And they're like, how awesome is that? You got your cow back and your long lost son. And he's like, maybe. And then I don't know how the story actually goes, but for instance, the son robs him. That he's not known him his whole life, and the son robs him, and he says, and they say, oh, it's so unfortunate. The guy that brought back your cow that was your son robbed you. And he's like, maybe. And then, you know, for some reason that money's gone, then, you know, someone comes and takes pity on him and gives him twice the amount of money. And, you know, it just keeps going back and forth and back and forth. And that to me is a great example of keeping your emotions between the lines, because you really don't know what something means. You might miss this door, right? But a much better door might open later, and you might think this is the greatest opportunity ever, and then you find out like, oh wow, this is terrible.
Right. Life by design, not by default. Intention, you know, and intention requires action in order to be put into place. But if you don't design how your life is going to be, a life will be developed and designed for you.
Yeah. To me, this one really ties well in with clarity is power, because if you were going to approach a year, like, what do we want to do this year as a business or as a family or as a person? What do I want? What is my goal at the end of the year to be like, this is, or in 10 years or whatever? Like, if I work, 80 hours a week for the next 30 years to make as much money as possible, but forgo everything else, I will be a shell of a human at the end and living in total regret. If I do the opposite and I spend all my time with my family, I don't work, I don't, pursue these things, I'm also going to feel that way. So it's like, okay, get clarity on how much time is spent here, how much energy is spent there, blah, blah, blah. Because, otherwise you're just a victim to whatever your knee-jerk reaction is, which I don't know anyone that's just done what they've done and not had some regrets along the way. And the people that wrote things down and were intentional are usually pretty satisfied afterwards.
Right. Yeah. Logic makes you think, emotion makes you act.
I said this last night, I think.
Yeah. And the one right after this is motion equals emotion. Yeah. So those are really tied together. But, and yet it's so true that, logically we think, and emotionally is when we act. Yeah. And there's a lot of training, I'll call it, done around the emotion and getting people to act. And I think that's okay as long as you're not manipulating people.
Totally. Go ahead.
I just, the whole idea of, if I can tap into somebody's emotions, I can make them make decisions. And if you're making them make bad decisions for themselves, you're
totally
you're self-serving.
Idiot.
Yeah.
I think using this on yourself, there are things that you want to do that if you just write down like the logical reason that you would save and invest money or exercise a few times a week, you will not do it. But if somehow you can tie those activities and actions to emotion, taking like, I need to be in shape, or I need to be healthy, or I need to be like financially free because it's the right thing to do and it's what I should do. It's like, you're not going to do it. But if the reason is, so that when your children have children, you can go on vacation with them and carry a child through Disney, or be able to front the money for the vacation, or whatever it is, like, okay. And then you tie those emotions to actions. I don't want to pick up the phone right now, or I don't want to go on this appointment, or I don't want to, edit this podcast or whatever. It's like, listen, this is your child's future. Editing this podcast is your child's future. Okay. I'm down to edit. Let's go.
That's back to that incremental steps that people want to avoid because they want immediate success. And how can you focus on those incremental steps? No pressure, no diamonds. I do like that one a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Sometimes I might rely on pressure a little bit too much.
For yourself?
For myself.
You put too much pressure on yourself?
I might, like all work expands to fill the time allowed. So if I know I have 3 days to get something done, it might be in the last 10 hours of those 3 days that I get it done. So there's my pressure and there's my diamonds. Yet, would it take pressure off me? I think where it's most important with no pressure, no diamonds is what kind of pressure are you putting on other people if, you have to balance that pressure out.
Yeah. It's hard to know with other people. I feel like it's easier to know with yourself if you're putting too much pressure. I think you won't do anything great unless it's, hard and requires more of you than you're currently prepared to give. That is something I really struggle with. Like, I'm down to put pressure on myself in certain areas of my life, but I've got to reinvent myself in order to succeed in this large area of my life that's a really tough one for me. But I know it's there. It's not like I get to decide whether it's true or not. It's true. Are you going to benefit from it, or are you going to be like, I should have done that?
Right. Yeah. People will grow into the conversations you have around them.
Is that different than create around them?
People will grow into the conversations you have around them. I'm not sure what you mean.
It's the same thing.
I think it's the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. People will grow into the conversations you have around them. To me, this is the antithesis of complaining equals garbage magnet.
Yeah. And I also think you could
the
say,
antidote.
I will grow into the conversations I have around people because you will determine who you want around you based on the conversations that you should elect to have conversations with people who are going to have, discuss things in the way that you want to. And it shouldn't be the way you want to, but the way that would make you better. If you want to be a better father, go hang out with people who you really respect as fathers, and then, that will gel. And I guess another way to look at this, though, is, I remember back when I was in the moving days, and, I've always had a thing about language, words, cussing. Yeah, thank you. I don't like cussing, and I can be around it. I understand that that's my choice. And yet when it reaches a certain level, it's not gonna work. And there was this one particular guy hard worker. I mean, he was a really hard worker, and his mouth just flew like a pirate. And I remember one specific job, I had to pull him aside. I just said, listen, I know this is the way you talk. I can't do it. I can't be around it. And we got to spend the next 8 hours together. So could you just give it a break? And, he didn't stop cussing, but he certainly relaxed enough so that it wasn't every other word that he came out with.
That's funny.
Yeah. Spontaneity is a conditioned reflex.
This one has always been one of, if not the most vague to me. Maybe it's because I don't struggle with spontaneity.
Maybe. Yeah, it's possible because it doesn't bother me either. But for some people, they can't be spontaneous. And it is a reflex you can develop, and you can become more spontaneous. I've seen it happen with people before. They're very rigid, they're very tight. And for them to go out of their bubble, out of their schedule, the person who you've got something scheduled at 9 and they're there, and all of a sudden you started the meeting at 8:55. Oh, you started early. That's not spontaneous. They're not ready for that spontaneity.
I could probably do with the opposite, whatever the opposite bowl law of this would be. Like, being spontaneous is not great all the time. So that's probably why I don't connect with this one, is because I am too spontaneous.
Success is simple, not easy.
Similar to the one, what was the one we were just talking about? Oh, emotion.
Emotion equals emotion.
And logic makes you think.
Logic makes you think. Emotion makes you act.
Yes. This one is similar to me in that, like, it's not that complicated to be successful or to be fit or whatever. It's very simple. It's incredibly difficult.
That's right.
Discipline, consistency. Consistency is like the most difficult thing on planet Earth.
Yeah.
And success is consistency.
Look at all the books, sayings, podcasts, blogs, whatever that have been written about how to be successful. How different are they? Maybe little nuances, but they're all basically the same. Just a matter of whether they're, whether it's easy or not. And it's not easy. There is no try. That was fun. So in this bold class, there were two things that they tried to eliminate out of our vocabulary. Specific words, try and but. And anytime somebody would say try, everybody, especially the coach who was leading the class, would say intend to or plan to, or would insert some other word. And but was replaced by and or some other word, but typically and or yet. So there is no try, and there is no try. There's only, I intend to do this. I'm going to do this, because trying, are you going to try? How hard are you going to try?
Right. Do or do not.
Do or do not.
But is the reason for that.
You said that word. I was almost like, you can't say that.
I'm going to get you.
I thought I had you.
But is removed because if you say, hey, Rick, you're a really great salesperson, but you're a little bit pushy. I just negated everything I said when I said you're a great salesperson.
I love you, honey. But, can you clean up the dishes afterwards?
Exactly. So, and the reason is I may really want to communicate that you are a good salesperson, and I don't want to take away from that at all. So I could say, Rick, you're a great salesperson, and you can be a little pushy. Both those things can exist can coexist together. No problem. And then the try is, like you said, how hard are you going to try? I'm going to try and be at your game on Saturday. I know I'm not going to be there. I want you to think I care. I do care, and not enough to actually show up.
Right. Yeah.
I say but a ton.
I say it a lot more than I should.
I say try a lot.
Yeah. And I think the key thing is if you can shift your mind away from those words and you're intending not to use them, then you have caused a change in how you think and how you perceive other people. And you can, especially when you're communicating with people, I think it makes such a difference. The more you use the word but, like you say, you've taken away the value of what you're really trying to say. And you can separate those two conversations so that it's not connected together.
Exactly.
It's a huge challenge. I can remember, I used to say it all the time, never thought about it. And most people, you'll hear them. And what's neat now is when they say something, I'll replace the word and or intend to, or, and I'm not saying I'm correcting them, but in my mind, I am changing that.
Right.
Yeah. Things aren't always as they appear to be.
I don't think of this one as a bold law. I think about it a lot in my own life and evaluating other people's, because there's a lot of signaling, especially financially. I noticed this one financially. And then and we work with a lot of different people who have different houses, different cars, different whatever, and you would not believe, and it's like the classic New York Times story, this janitor dies and donates $9 million to local whatever, and then Google CEO, stealing money here, doesn't have actually any money, whatever it is. There's like those classic spectrum stories. And for me, it's a good reminder that you see someone driving in a really nice car, don't listen to the story there. Or the opposite, don't judge the person who walks up in tattered jeans. And I know a few people that have some deep pockets that you would never guess.
Yeah, read The Millionaire Next Door.
Yeah, it's a great example.
Yeah, this guy invited all these millionaires because he wanted to know how they thought, and he did it in some swanky penthouse suite or something, and had all these hors d'oeuvres and fine wines and things. And the people that he invited showed up in jeans and flannel shirts, and where's the Budweiser?
Yeah, they wanted
the
cheap
Pabst
beer.
Blue Ribbon.
Yeah. What is an example for you that when you think about this one, that you see layered onto your life or the way you see the world?
Things aren't always as they appear to be?
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there something you're thinking of?
No.
Oh, okay. I think a lot of it is the facade that people have on the outside. And, peel that onion down a few layers. And where does that come from? That hardcore on the outside. It's because either they've been hurt before, or there's such a soft shell inside that they have to be hard outside.
Or the opposite.
They're
super nice,
but
they're
nice.
like
hard, like
daggers.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah.
I'm like, be nice to everyone, but hate everyone. I'm over exaggerating. However, I tend to lean more towards being nicer than I actually am, versus some people are kind of neutral, but seem hard or are hard.
Yep.
It's funny.
The purpose of business is to fund a perfect life.
Yeah, that gets back to like if you work 80 hours a week and
Right. What is the perfect life? You
Right.
have to decide what the perfect life is. If the perfect life for you is $1 million by this certain amount of time, that heck, have at it. Not
Yeah.
my perfect life, but that's your perfect life. Yeah.
What is your perfect life?
My perfect life is to be able to do what I want to do when I wake up in the morning with whoever I want to do it with for as long as I want to do.
Mm.
I didn't have that in my brain until I read Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money, because that's the way he wrote it, and that's puts it all in a nice little bow.
That book is the best book. Other than the one thing, that book's the best book in my opinion, because the one thing talks about everything, but money pretty much determines all of what people do 99% of the time. So where the rubber meets the road of the one thing, kind of the psychology of money bolts onto, in my opinion. And that book brings up two bold laws to me, like right off the bat. One we already talked about, which was logic makes you think, emotion makes you act. If everyone just went off logic, we'd borrow money and invest money, and we wouldn't be stressed at all. Because we know
if we just followed the commercials and the tagline or the beeline
or the facts, that says that
true.
if you borrow money and you invest money, you will make money. There's some spread to be made. However, most people cannot handle that. And then the other one is the one we just talked about, which is appearances, which was
things aren't always as they appear to be.
Things aren't always as they appear to be.
Yeah.
He talks about driving up in a car, a nice car, that when someone drives up in a nice car, you don't look at them and go, wow, that person's cool. You go, wow, imagine if I was riding in that car, how I would feel. You're thinking about yourself, not them. So it's like, why? I mean, if you want to drive a nice car because you want to drive a nice car, go for it. However, no one is looking at you and thinking, I love this guy because he's in this nice car. They're thinking about themselves being in that car. So that book is amazing.
An amazing book. You can have reasons or you can have results, and you can't have both. And then just a quick aside on this one. So this is one that typically trips people up in bold, because they will say you can have reasons or you can have results, but you can't have both. So it's a classic example of replacing and for but.
Yeah, you mean like historically,
so
there was but in there and there shouldn't be.
Well, people in their mind, in your mind, that's a contradiction.
Yeah.
You would contradict the results, or the reasons results, and you would contradict that with you can't have both. When in fact, and you can't have both is the way of phrasing it without using the word but in there.
So you can have reasons or you can have results, and you can't have both.
Right.
So this is excuses.
Basically, it is excuses, yes.
That's what this one's talking about. That if you show up and you say, oh, I was late because traffic, and the real reason you were late, you didn't leave early enough. Or you say, I was late. I'm late. Here I am. I'm late. Do you want to hear my story? No? Okay. Great. Then we're already starting late. So, and I've interrupted. I was almost late the other day, and I was like, and I do this all the time. Anytime I'm almost late, I start thinking of like, what would I say?
Oh, sure.
If someone's like, why are you late? Or
and what comes to mind first?
Excuses.
Excuses.
Yeah. Well, I went outside. My tires were low, which they were, which they're always low because my wheels or whatever. Well, I could have filled them the night before, or I could have gone out and started my car half an hour before I was going to leave, checked my wheels, would have had extra time. There's always something to do. Your excuses
you can have reasons or you can have results, and you can't have both.
Exactly.
Want equals lack.
This one's very confusing for people. Usually,
I love this
typically.
one. Yeah.
So what do you think about this?
Well, I think about this like from a business perspective, I think about this more than anything else. At times when either real estate cycle or my activities are low and I'm starting to see I don't have enough closings coming up in the next few months or next week or whatever it happens to be, and my mind will go into I'm lacking and I'm wanting, and it is just a spiral that spins down, and you end up in a negative spot, and questioning what you've been doing, how have you been doing it, So that's how I see an awful lot of it.
How would you word the antidote to this one?
Be, do, achieve.
Okay. So instead of wanting,
You're doing.
you're being.
You're being, yeah.
Or yeah, okay.
I think be equals achieve, maybe.
What is
Or do
what is
do equals achieve, yeah.
what does want like mean to you in relation to this?
So to me, want would be security, basics, necessities are the want kind of that drive lack. And I guess you could take that beyond. For me, it's basic. I feel the basic necessities, which then relate to all the other frills and benefits that come from having more than just the necessities. That if I don't have this, then I can't do that.
Got it. Yeah, this one's always been tough for me, just to understand.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I understand it generally, but I don't like connect with it like some of the others. Just like, oh yeah,
yeah. Like this one, want what you focus on expands. Bingo.
Yeah.
If I'm focusing on, and it goes either way, negative or positive.
Problems.
Yeah. For
opportunities.
me, I'm going to focus on, being able to ride my bike faster than I can now. My FTP, my functional threshold performance level, or whatever that stands for. I have a target goal for where that's going to be, and if I focus on that, and if I, it'll expand.
Yeah,
it's just like I've been thinking about doing this bold law recording, and kind of been putting it in my thoughts a little bit, and then we had a call yesterday from the developer of this whole program, who's got an event that she's putting on, and do we want to come? I'm like, holy cow, where did that come from?
Yeah.
In addition to these laws that always, I'm just thinking about them throughout the day, and so automatic now that they come in, it's almost just patterned, or what's the word I'm looking for? Subconscious.
Yeah,
how it comes out.
Juliet has always said about me that I walk into the bank and they owe me money, like that. Like I just I'm lucky, and at first I was like, like I'm not lucky. I've worked hard or whatever. And it's like, no, you haven't. I am lucky, but like everyone should think of themselves as lucky. Trust me. Yeah. If you're like doubting whether it works or not,
because what you focus on expands.
Yeah, you should definitely think you're lucky, because you're gonna see these circumstances that fall, like this call that you just got that falls out of the sky at the right time. You're going to see a lot more of those if you're looking for them.
Yeah.
If you're interested in buying a car, and you start noticing the Subaru Outback. Actually, that's a terrible example in Maine. Let's go with something different. The new Ford Bronco. And you're like, I really want a Ford Bronco. You're going to see Ford Broncos everywhere. If you really want a Volkswagen all-road wagon, you're going to see Volkswagen all-road wagons everywhere. They're not more. You're just noticing them.
Yeah. And it kind of goes along. And so another thing from that bold class, these bold laws, and then there were the bold affirmations.
So we finished all the laws?
No, not yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm just going to break a little bit into this for a second. So the bold affirmations were something that were recorded, and it was Dianna Kokoszka, and I don't know who the other person was.
Tony, what's his name? From Canada. Or is he from Canada? Upstate New York. He's done bold like 1 billion times.
Oh, is it Cody?
No,
I can't remember what it. I think you're right, though. I don't know his name. Anyways, there's a guy. It's Dianna and a guy.
Yeah, and
they go back and forth. And one of those affirmations is, people say I'm lucky.
And that's probably why.
I listen to those every morning when I'm working out, and that one rings true to me. And I used to be the same way. I'm not lucky. I'm working hard for what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Heck, I'm the luckiest guy in the world.
I'd rather be lucky than good.
Yeah, right. And you are lucky if you put it in that perspective.
Yeah. Also,
I'm
if
lucky
you
I
are
woke up this
listening to this podcast, you are so lucky. I don't care what you have going on because you grew up in a place where you had an iPhone.
Mm.
Like, you're not digging the minerals that make an iPhone out of the ground in some godforsaken part of Africa that these people have, like, literally the saddest existence ever. You're lucky compared to them. You're always lucky
You're
compared
always
to
lucky.
someone.
You're always, I mean, Viktor Frankl, the man's search for meaning. That's what he boiled it down to, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you're lucky you didn't grow up in Nazi Germany as a Jew. You know, you're lucky you didn't grow up in Soviet Russia during, it's like, we're lucky.
Mm-hmm. You get what you deserve in your imagination.
This is an interesting one.
Is that because you have a very large imagination?
No, actually, it's funny. I wasn't thinking that because I was listening to someone the other day and they were talking about how they've got everything they ever wanted. And if they like even made it like remotely known to God or the universe or whatever they're coming from, that they kind of like got that thing. And so they said, instead of wanting things or seeing things that I couldn't have, you can't have a great wife and also, be interested in other women. Like you can't, those things are mutually exclusive. So if you want a great wife and you've decided to like invest in a marriage, then when you look at other women, you just don't be interested in them because you're
done.
You can't have one of those things and the other.
Right.
So, or if you want to live on this side of the town, then don't go look at houses on the other side of town and go, oh man, it'd be great to live over here. It's like, you want to live over there. You can look at those houses and go, these are great houses. And I just think that's like a really powerful, mindset that, you get what you deserve in your imagination. If you say like, I want to live on this side of town and I deserve to live on that side of town, your brain is just going to naturally work towards making that happen. If you don't think you deserve it, you're not going to ever even go for it.
Right. And your example with the wife or woman or husband, whatever it happens to be, you also have to put parameters on that, and you have to have other laws like, let's say, thou shalt not commit adultery.
Right.
That sets the parameters on, okay, yeah, you get what you deserve in your imagination. So I've imagined this woman that I'm going to be married to and I'm going to be with for the rest of my life. When you see someone else, you could start to imagine that. No, you instead focus on what you have and imagine that being the best that it can possibly be. And what can you do, not they do, to make it the best that it is? Well, how can you make yourself better so that you're the best for them?
Right.
Your business grows to the extent that you do. This makes me think of Jim Rohn's. I can't remember the exact quote, but basically he says, unless you're growing and you're not going to help anybody else and you're not going to help yourself.
Yeah.
You got to be learning. And
yeah.
The more time you spend on yourself, the more you'll grow and the more other people will benefit from your growth.
This one ties in really well with do what you've always done, get what you've always got. Yeah, I think it's just, if like considering our business and where we want to go and what we want to do, the only way we do those things is we do things differently than we currently do them. And otherwise you say, I would be okay with the way things are right now, which really doesn't work because, this is a great story. My brother-in-law, one time we were in Booth Bay, and he's from Georgia, and he's a strong person. Like, he's just strong energy, booming voice. We're talking about Booth Bay Harbor and the changes that have happened. Some people aren't a fan, some people are. People want things to stay the same. And he looks at me and like with like divine clarity, he
Clarity
says,
and power. Yeah.
He says, things don't stay the same. They either get worse or they get better. And I was like, whoa. I was like, man. And I've heard Jordan Peterson talk about that things move in increments. And quickly life gets a lot better, or quickly life gets a lot worse. And I was just like, wow, that's like that. That moment for me was when that was like totally solidified that, if we're not improving our business, if we're not trying to grow the amount of lives we change by helping people sell their house, or from what we do as a business, improving the number of lives we can change with, tithe, or, our time, or whatever it is, like, if we don't do that, we are going to get worse and worse and worse and worse until eventually we're like, well, why is there no business?
Right.
And I think that's like, it's really easy to be like, oh yeah, if you're not growing, you're not growing. But if you're not growing, you're dying.
If you're not growing, you're not sowing.
Yeah.
And you're not knowing.
Yeah. We talked about that on the last one. Yeah.
Yep. Your cells eavesdrop on your thoughts. Your cells eavesdrop on your thoughts. I think that's pretty interesting. It's like, okay, there's no hiding. It's even to your cell level. And I don't know if this is the example in Bold that they used. Is this the one where they did the snowflakes?
Yes. That's yeah.
What were you going to say?
I've heard like different things about that study, but it's a cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that, if you spoke over water positive things, and if you spoke over water negative things, they looked at the cell structure of the water, then turned to ice. The ice cells, crystal structures that were spoken good things over were like beautiful, symmetrical, clear. The crystals that were formed where negative things were spoken over them, like Hitler was one of them, or like death, or all these things, were like crooked and like disheveled and dark, and I don't know what the actual science is on that, but it's just a great illustration. Either way, things can be true without being true. And our mindset is so important. I think health too. I like really struggle to go there with, like the things you believe about your body healing from an injury, or gosh, I like can't even get into it because some people deal with chronic pain and there's no explanation for that.
No, there's no explanation. And there's more and more studies now that are showing that the mind has the ability to mask and layer the pain, and I'm a firm believer in that. The more you're focused on something other than pain, the less pain you'll deal with. It. I don't mean to be a panacea. That's not, it's not going to end.
Right.
But there are ways to deal with it that we haven't learned to understand completely yet.
Totally.
And I think it's being researched, and some good things will come from that.
Yeah. There's no reason not to try.
Right.
That's all I'll say about that.
There's no reason not to intend.
Yeah. To give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
Yeah. To
make a plan.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
So that's the bold laws.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. At 30?
I think it's 32.
32.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Dianna Kokoszka. We're forever grateful, indebted to her.
Well, I mean, really, I've taken Bold. I took Bold, I don't know how many times. I think I might have taken it a couple of times before my accident. And my accident happened in August, end of August. And Bold usually comes out in the fall and spring. And it came out in October, 1st of October. I couldn't drive. Your mom drove me to all of the 7 sessions at that time. And it helped get me back on track. It was something pivotal to helping me be better, refocus. And, I was able to share my story with people.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. I have taken it 4 or 5 times. I can't remember. And I've taken it like half times where I've like been in there, but my heart hasn't been in it. Or I like too. didn't stay all the way one time when I was in Atlanta. It doesn't get less impactful. It just, you're focused on different things, and like you're kind of the teacher versus you're like helping other people or encouraging other people. I love like the group coaching environment. It's so powerful.
Oh, and what's that phrase about a man crossing a river?
A man never steps in the same river twice.
Right. And
For the
that's
river's not the same, and nor is the man.
right.
Yeah.
And that's the way anything like this is. If you
Yeah.
repeat it, you're not in the same
Totally.
place. You're
Totally.
seeing a different perspective. You're going to focus on different
Yeah.
things. You're going to improve.
Well, it's like
different parts of
watching
your
a
life.
movie or reading a book.
Yes.
Like you watch a movie twice, guaranteed you pick up on things you didn't see the first time. Take it 3 times, watch it 3 times. You're gonna.
Right.
It just, especially the more layered the movie is, and this, in the analogy of a movie, is very layered. There's a lot going on.
Yes.
Or you might be a dad now, and you didn't. You weren't a dad before, and then you watch the movie, and now you're a dad, and you're imagining what the father's going through with this daughter or son, and you're like, oh, this is hitting very different. Similar here.
Yeah. So, bold laws.
Be bold.
Be bold. Yes. All right. Thanks, Benjamin.
Thanks, Dad.
Love you, guys.
Love you.